I'm Iris Muller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and a proud mom of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
And I'm Alma Schneider, a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mom of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new. This is Two Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us at Two Moms, No Fluff, the podcast in which we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities. And today, another episode in preparation for the holiday season, and I'll let Alma introduce the topic. Hello,
Thank
Alma.
you, Iris. Thank you, and welcome to everyone, new listeners and veteran listeners. We are going to talk about a topic that has to do, as Iris said, with vacations or just traveling, and it is what to do, strategies to make your life easier when you're staying in either a hotel or an Airbnb. So, Iris and I talked a little bit about this before, about the pros and cons of both. So, Iris, do you want to start with your pro con of the hotel or the Airbnb?
Yes, I think for each their own, but our experience, we've been kind of burned before with trying to book an accessible Airbnb. And several times the interpretation of what accessible really means and the actual reality of an apartment or a house that we rented made it such a bitter vacation that we are now sticking to hotels and hotel chains only in which we know that they adhere to the same standard that we are expecting. It makes our vacation a little bit less stressful because we know what we are going to find. We actually are now sticking to a specific hotel chain. I'm not going to mention names as we do not advertise in this podcast yet. If someone wants to pay us for advertisement, yes, I will mention which hotel chain. But at the moment, I just want to say that accessibility is such a basic thing that we once booked an Airbnb with a bunch of our friends, a huge kind of cottage with lots of rooms. And we brought only our power wheelchair because after many discussions with the homeowners, it was guaranteed that everything is accessible, except she forgot to mention the few steps to walk into the house. And with that, we ended up having to hold my daughter in our lap to feed her or to be indoors in general. Luckily, she was still, I think, about 8 at that time, and it was feasible, but this is totally unacceptable. It really did ruin our vacation, and that's just one example of things going wrong in an Airbnb for us. Alma, I know you like Airbnb, so I'll pass the mic on to you, and maybe you can tell us why, yes, choose an Airbnb.
Okay, well, for starters, not having to do with disability, we have 4 children, and sometimes we travel with more than our 4 kids. And it's really important for us to have private space because of, the different age groups and not wanting to be together all the time and everybody needing a little bit of space. But Airbnbs are a lot less expensive than getting a few hotel rooms. So that's one reason why I really like them. But also because there is often we have food issues. And so being able to prepare our own food in an Airbnb is really, really important because we don't want to have to go to restaurants. It's really important for us to be able to have control over the food. And I know that that's true for a lot of other families that have children with disabilities that might not be Prader-Willi syndrome like my son has, but just any kind of allergies or just health issues having to do with food. So I love being able to prepare all of that. I also like being able to make coffee whenever I want, which is also something useful in an Airbnb if a hotel doesn't have a lot of coffee for the coffee maker. So that's one reason. Also, for us and for a lot of people who have children who have a lack of impulse control, when there is a mini fridge stocked with garbage food, It is really important for us. And if we have to stay in a hotel, we contact the one of the things you can do is you can contact the hotel and say, please take everything out of the mini fridge. Keep it plugged in because we need to have medication that's cold. So I like having a mini fridge in there, but definitely do not want any food in there because my child can take it. And not only is it unhealthy and dangerous for him to eat it, it is a fortune, as we all know, to, a package of Twizzlers could be $5 that your child takes out of there in the middle of the night. And we do not want that. So that food thing is really important for us. In addition to that, it's really important uh, for us to have an Airbnb because our child could, or your child could conceivably leave the room and go downstairs and order food that is then billed to the hotel because there's always like a little gift shop with food in it or a restaurant. So for us, we don't want any possibility of that happening. So one of the ways that we can deal with that if we do have to stay in a hotel is to contact the hotel and say, do not allow anything to be put on our tab at all. So if our child did happen to leave and go downstairs, there's no way that they'll be able to buy food, putting it on our tab.
Ay, yeah.
I
Challenges,
know.
challenges. Yes.
Many
Uh,
challenges.
complicatedvacations.com. This is what this episode is about.
And
So,
oftentimes we say it's not a vacation, it's a trip, not a vacation.
yeah. And if it is a vacation, my recommendation is when a family does choose a destination to consider if you do have a child with a mobility impairment, to choose destinations that hosted the Olympic Games in the past.
Mm,
Because if they hosted the Olympic Games, they did host the Paralympic Games, meaning that there's plenty of hotels that are nicely done in terms of wheelchair accessibility. There is more public transportation that is accessible. Airports, train terminals, etc., are wheelchair friendly, so it makes the travel much easier. I love going to London where every cab I stop has a ramp and we can easily
wow.
go on any bus, any taxi, and obviously the underground system is also wheelchair accessible, and that's really nice. And same goes to Beijing after the Olympic Games. We've been there, and it's just amazing how New York City is lagging behind so badly in terms of using public transportation. So that's a couple of comments, but what is helpful in terms of hotels, the hotels that are near the Olympic Park might have Hoyer lifts and other equipment like adjustable beds, etc., because that was used by the athletes during the Olympic Games or Paralympic Games. And you want to do your research and call the hotel in advance to see what kind of durable medical equipment is already readily available for you. So when you come with your family, you don't need to schlep a bath seat, a toilet seat, a Hoyer lift, etc., because some of it might already be there. That's my tip.
Great, great. Another tip I have, or another pro for Airbnbs, if possible, uh, is that sometimes our children have a lot of meltdowns, and it can make us very stressed out if we are concerned that we're making a lot of noise for the other people staying in a hotel. So you're not as close to other guests when you're in an Airbnb typically, and you can kind of sit back if your child is having a meltdown and wait for it to end, as opposed to sitting there incredibly stressed out because you're disrupting other people's sleep. So that's another reason why I like the idea of an Airbnb. It feels more private. Not all the time, because you have to make sure that you're in an area that is not, you're not on top of each other with the Airbnb. But that's another reason why I like it. And I just, Iris and I Googled, we wanted to make sure that this did exist, but for children who do elope and leave areas in the middle of the night, there are portable locks that can be put on doors. So if you're in a hotel or an Airbnb, to be able to put a lock on the door so that they can't leave. You can also barricade your door, which I have done in the past. It doesn't always work, but if you can or if you are able to pull your bed and put it in front of the door, that's another way to avoid having your child leave the room. We're talking about some extreme situations here, but guess what? We've had to deal with these types of situations.
Yeah, so I want to speak a bit about staying in hotels and choosing a wheelchair accessible room or a disability friendly room versus a typical regular room. So for that, I want to invite families to consider their needs because sometimes the wheelchair accessible bathroom is equipped with a shower stall only and not with a bathtub. For us, we always bring a bath seat for our daughter. It's much easier to bathe her in a bathtub rather than in a shower. And also, soaking her in hot water really helps relax some of the muscle spasms and decrease pain, especially after a long flight. So don't assume that choosing a wheelchair accessible room would resolve all problems. Do your research with regards to that. And also, in some locations, we found out that in order to make the bathroom wheelchair accessible, they took so much space from the actual bedroom that it was impossible for four people, because we are traveling, my husband, myself, and two kids, to maneuver inside the bedroom of that hotel room. So these are things that are important to consider. And the last bit about that is that sometimes when people see us, we come with the service dog and the wheelchair and other equipment, the suitcases and the two children. They want to help accommodate us. And we a couple of times got upgraded to a suite, which was really nice. However, in a suite, we had a situation that there's one king size bed, and then the other bed is usually a sofa bed that opens up. And because each of us would sleep, we take turns with helping my daughter during the night. The person who ended up on that night sleeping on the sofa bed would not sleep because it was so uncomfortable, that solution. So sometimes downsizing and going with a regular bedroom, but having two queen size beds might be more reasonable and comfortable. Having a vacation where the two adults did not sleep at night is no fun.
I hear you. I hear you. Something else I wanted to mention was getting a room if your child is afraid of elevators, because a lot of kids do have, some sensory issues, and you can have the ears plug up, or just, if you're not accustomed to being in an elevator, it can be scary. It was funny for me growing up in New York City in an apartment building that had an elevator. I was so used to it because everywhere you go in the city, you're in an elevator. My kids, to my surprise, were really, one of my children was really afraid of elevators because they had never been in one because we lived in the suburbs. So, uh, if that is the case and your child, does have difficulty with elevators, try ahead of time to get a room that is either on the second floor or the third, so that you can walk down the stairs. Or if you, alternatively, if your child needs to kind of get their energy out, and you need to run them, you can get a higher floor and go all the way down the stairs 20 flights, if so just thinking about those kinds of things when you're traveling, I think it can be really helpful. And one last thing I have is, more of the emotional piece. We always like to bring in something about, dealing with families and friends. A lot of times when we are traveling because there is some kind of a family event going on, like a wedding or a party, a reunion, and everybody has booked a hotel room in the same hotel. And we might feel pressure to stay in the hotel, or the Airbnb, whatever it is, whatever the accommodations are where the rest of the family or friends are. And again, this is a time when it's really important, again, as we often bring up, to really think about what is going to make your life easier. So even if the rest of your friends or family are staying somewhere else, what is going to be the least stressful for you, what is going to be the most practical for you, and go with that. Even if you're feeling pressured to be with everyone else, you're not going to have a great time if you're miserable and you can't sleep because you're in a lousy sofa bed or something else. The sleeping arrangements and the accommodations need to work for your family. So even if you're pressured, hold firm. explain your situation. If they're not accepting it, too bad. You need to do what's best for you and your family.
Yeah, that's a good tip for life, Alma. I appreciate that. I need to remind myself those things sometimes too. Yeah. So something about hotels, we were talking about fear of elevators, and my child has a fear of fire alarms.
Mm,
And obviously, when there is a real fire alarm, definitely you need to be on a lower floor so you
mhm,
can escape with the child who's wheelchair bound. But with regards to the fire alarms, hotels have, I think, their quarterly or half yearly fire alarm checkups. And this can really ruin a vacation for us. So we absolutely do call each and every hotel before we book to make sure that we are not there on a week that something like that is happening. And even if someone tells you a comforting message, it's only going to be about 10 minutes. Skip. My recommendation. We
yeah.
once had the Oberoi Hotel in India actually change their
Wow.
week for that test because we were in the hotel and we explained to them the dramatic effect of something like that on our child. It's like really a serious serious problem. So, but not every hotel is as nice as the Oberoi Hotel in India. So, just saying. I think that for us, it's important in hotels in general to make knowledgeable decisions about the food offerings. And when we talk about that, it's good to know, for example, if the hotel even has a kitchen and if they can offer breakfast in the hotel. And if they do have room service, if we come from an international flight in the middle of the night, that there is something that's, available so we can purchase food for our kids in, I don't know, random hours when they wake up at 3 a.m. and think it's the beginning of a beautiful new day and there's nothing open around. So these are important questions to ask and learn in advance.
Mhm.
And the other thing, make sure that you stay in a hotel that has a laundry room, that you can do your own laundry, because sometimes kids do get sick. Sometimes, you go through a week's worth of clothing in 2 days. Happened to us before. And the worst is like looking for a public laundromat in a new city. Usually the touristic areas do not have those services. You need to take a taxi for half an hour to where normal people live, not the tourists. And this is complicated. So definitely worth finding out in advance if there's a laundry machine in that room that is coin operated.
Great, great tip. That's really important. And that's another reason why I like Airbnbs, because oftentimes they have a washer and dryer. And the last thing that I have to add to this conversation is making sure that if you have the benefit of being with another adult or someone old enough to stay with the child who might have some behavioral issues or, physical impairments, it's can be very helpful to have only one person go in to check in and to check out of the hotel, so that you're not sitting around in the lobby um, for a while where your child can get frustrated or bored and start acting out, or checking out the candy section in the gift shop, which is always our downfall. So just making sure that process goes as quickly and as smoothly as humanly possible, so that you get a text from the other adult saying, okay, we're going straight up to the room now, as opposed to, we have to sit here and there's a line and, it's frustrating waiting around to get checked in or checked out.
Oh, yes, it's a good one. And I spoke a little bit earlier about durable medical equipment that might be or not in the hotel. Another thing that is really important for us, and you spoke a little bit about the mini bar, which is obviously very important to have a refrigerator if you're carrying your own special food or medicine, but also a blender. For
Mm,
those of us who have kids on a liquid diet and that have swallowing challenges, a blender is a real bonus. There are some low cost chains that have like a library of items that you can borrow in the hotel lobby. One of them is a blender. But if the hotel doesn't supply that to your room, you might want to check in advance if the kitchen staff would be able to help you with pureeing food. Some hotel chains have been really user friendly, helping us with like mushing salads orders and I guess other fruits or meals, but others were just not. Like it was, you know, the kitchen staff would not help with something like that. So in that case, I want to also mention the new development of like the small portable blenders. Some of them are not very strong, and you can't really, let's say, mush an apple in them. But it is a something that we take with us, and in case of emergency, if you just want to mush some pasta and meatballs, it can be done.
I
That's
have a suggestion that you
okay.
just made me
Great.
think of. My kitchen hat is on right now, my chef's hat, bringing a coffee grinder, because a
Mm.
coffee grinder for small amounts can serve that purpose as well.
Very smart, Alma. Every day with Alma, I learn something new, people. I'm
Thank
telling
you.
you, I have the best partner ever. Alma, anything else to order to add to order?
Right now, I don't have anything else. I'm sure more things will come to me. And if you all in the listening range of our podcast can think of other tips and tricks for hotels and Airbnbs to make it as stress free and pleasurable as possible, please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating if you like our podcast and a wonderful review so that other people will see that. The best way for other people to be able to hear our podcast is to have reviews and ratings. So we're really trying to reach people who need to hear what we have to say.
Awesome. Alma, thank you so much yet again for another interesting episode, and I'll see you next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.